Hey, everybody. Welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy.
When does it become the Trump economy?
It partially is right now. And I really mean this. I think the good parts are the Trump economy and the bad parts are the Biden economy because he's done a terrible job. He did a terrible job on everything.
But, sir, you acknowledge when you announced your tariffs, for example, the stock market dropped. It's been volatile. It has since gone up.
It is,
Do you
but now
take
it's
responsibility
look at
for
today.
that? Yeah. Do you take responsibility when it drops?
Ultimately, I take responsibility for everything, but I've only just been here for a little more than 3 months.
When you say they could have $3 instead of $30, are you saying Americans could see empty store shelves?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they don't need to have $30. They can have 3. They don't need to have 250 pencils. They can have 5.
Is it okay in the short term to have a recession?
Look, everything's okay. What we are, I said, this is a transition period. I think we're going to do fantastically.
Are you worried about a recession?
No.
All right, that was Donald Trump on Meet the Press last Sunday. We're going to talk about that in a second. We also have Connecticut Congresswoman Jahana Hayes on with us today. We'll chat with the Congresswoman in just a moment. But first, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and or post on our social media, and we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please rate and review and follow or subscribe, and to be notified every time we post a new episode. So let's talk about Donald Trump and Meet the Press. Let me see if I understand this. If good things happen, it's Donald Trump. If bad things happen, we still get to blame it on Joe Biden. Do I have that right?
You do, and I love the fact that he was like, and I really believe this. And because he does.
Well, listen, when he says I really believe this, then that's how I know it is 1,000% accurate and true. That man does not lie. You can say a lot of things about Donald Trump, but he does not lie.
He reminds me of the Incredible Hulk. It's like Trump economy good, Biden economy bad.
Yeah, that's what he does. It's like, I've only been here 3 months.
Cut me some slack. Cut me some slack.
So I don't know if you guys had seen him do this, but when they were asking him recently about the contraction in GDP, which was the first time in years since the pandemic, he blamed that on Biden also. It's first quarter GDP, which means January, February, March. His explanation for blaming it on Biden was that Biden was there till January 20th.
It's the best he's got. Deflect, deflect, deflect.
So like January 21st through March 31st, not as significant as what happened in those first 20 days. Mm-hmm. Forget the tariffs, forget the trade wars, forget the stock market crash, forget all of it. First quarter GDP, it's Biden's fault. You got to give him credit for something, either hubris or delusion or sociopathy, whatever. I mean, like, guy's got some kind of special sauce.
Yes, he does.
Ooh, I don't like the way you said that, Jen. Or maybe I do like the way you said that. Okay. What kid has 250 pencils?
Matt.
Well, I do like pencils. But the thing about him is everything that you hear out of his mouth, it sounds like Montgomery Burns. I mean, what era was it that children had dolls and pencils as gifts? I just like, what year does he think this is? Why, like, he's not saying like they can't get Super Nintendo or anything that's remotely of this century.
It's not a matter of what year he thinks it is. I think it's more of what year he wants it to be.
Well,
he wants
both.
it to be like 1957.
Oh, no, I think I differ. I think most of what they want is 1890s.
Oh,
basically.
that's true. That's true. But seriously, like, first of all, where are Republicans who want small government and get out of my life? Like, where are the libertarians? Like, who is this fucker to tell us how many dolls we should have?
Or how many pencils.
Or how many pencils. That's the kind of shit that happens in China, in North Korea, in Russia, where dear leader tells everybody what they should and shouldn't have. But he's so colossally out of touch that, you know, you don't need $30. You can have 5. As if, like, poor fucking kids got $5. Like that's a bad thing. Like, that's scrimping and saving. $5.
Well, he talks very highly of the North Korean leader, so maybe he wants us to be like North Korea.
Oh, he definitely wants us to be like North Korea. I'm surprised he doesn't dress like Kim Jong-un. Like, that suit with like the
Well, they both have a thing with
that
their
little
hair.
special collar that Kim has,
Yes.
on the jacket.
As long as he has clothes on still, I think we have a good day.
Well, with that body, he can wear anything.
It's true.
You know what they say about him? Like, clothes just hang on him because... And he's got the broad shoulders. He's got, what is he? 249 pounds? For a man of 6'7", whatever.
Yeah.
An obese man of 6'7".
And then for you MAGA folks out there, I hope you took note of him saying that recession is okay. Because I think your view of a recession and what happens with layoffs, cutbacks, and family trauma might be a little different than his idea of what happens during a recession. Because I think if he understood that, he probably wouldn't be so arrogantly dismissing the likelihood of a recession. And he's continuing to get smacked down in the courts, one ruling after the other. And that's an encouraging sign, as it has been for weeks and weeks. I just feel like when I watch him, his body language, like he just seems like tired, and his fire in the belly isn't there the same way. Something's changing. And I think it's because he's probably realizing that a lot of his policies have created fucking chaos, which the electorate does not like, let alone some in the Republican caucus. And I think that, just like a lot of these issues are starting to break through, I think it's starting to break through to him. So the bravado is not as intense.
Yes, his stamina seems to have completely been reduced. He constantly says, "I don't know," which is extremely unusual for him because he usually just makes up bullshit to fill in the space. So you ask him a question and he just goes on and on about something which has nothing to
It's
do with
oddly
it.
more honest in a way. It's a combination of I don't know and I don't care. I mean, that clip we just played from that interview, I do think it's probably the most honest interview he's ever given. And it's not because he's turned a corner and decided he wants to be truthful. I think he really just doesn't give a fuck. He just doesn't care. That, on some level, is a good thing. It's a bad thing in other ways. On some level, it's a good thing.
Yeah, I think it's possible that he's grifting so much and getting everything that he wants that it's like,
I think you're right.
Between his crypto coin, where he's made God knows how many hundreds of millions off of people investing in his
the level of criminality is off the charts. It is unbelievable.
And it's unchecked in many ways. I mean, there are a lot of legal issues, but he's still very free reign.
I mean, while it's true that the courts have pushed back on some of his policies, as far as his grifting, there's not a single court order that said like, oh, you need to restrict some because of any laws. He is 100% free reign to do whatever he wants. And maybe he's just getting bored.
It's really up to Congress to rein that in, no?
Well, I mean, there would have been laws against the cryptocurrency, but he disbanded that unit of the Justice Department. So it's like everything that could restrict him in any way, shape, or form as far as grifting. There's nothing. There's no restriction. So
that might be their strategy. Let him just fucking make money. Shut him up.
Keep
him like a kid. Put him in a room with the toys. Let him be happy. Let him play.
Well, he's not the only one making money.
No, he's not.
So
it takes a village.
It takes a village to grift that hard because there are a lot of people benefiting, including people in Congress, his cabinet.
Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's apparently been raking in the dough with some questionable trading. And then the tariffs, it is so head-spinning to try to keep up with what he's trying to do. Now we got a UK deal, but is it a deal? It's not really a deal.
I think we're at day 36. We're supposed to have 90 deals in 90 days. We don't even have a deal with Great Britain. It's like a memo, and even in the memo, it seems like the only winner is Rolls-Royce and Land Rover.
There's still a 10% tariff, so that's the tariff issue, right? The issue with tariffs is the actual tariff, so that's still there. Like all this other stuff, it just seemed like a lot of performative nonsense. Yeah. And then this morning comes out with a statement about China going to reduce it to 80. The thing about Trump that I find so fascinating is that he's sending Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and the trade team to Switzerland this weekend to meet with their Chinese counterparts to hopefully work towards a deal. But this morning, he starts throwing out numbers, 80%, and outlining terms. And then he's like, but it's up to Scott. I don't understand how anyone thinks this guy is a master deal maker. You don't put all your cards on the table and say what you're willing to settle for and undermine your negotiating team before the meeting even takes place.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the thing is that all of this is about more grift, essentially. We learned this week from the Washington Post that they're trying to force countries to take Starlink as part of a deal in any kind of tariff negotiation, which, how does that have anything to do with bringing fact? I mean, of course not.
We have a new pope.
Yes.
First time in history, an American pope.
Yeah.
That's awesome. But don't for a minute think that that wasn't a statement by the Vatican.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're talking about a U.S. president who right now is just destroyed civility, decency, compassion, empathy, tolerance, acceptance, assaults on democracy. Like, I think it's pretty darn clear that they chose an American for a very specific, pointed reason, to send a message. And, interestingly, this guy has quite a Twitter profile, if you've been following that. Like in the past.
I have not followed his Twitter profile, so do tell.
He's like smacked down J.D. Vance on Twitter. He has been vocal about gun reform. Like, he's got a voice. And I think he intends to use it, which would be great.
Well, I thought it was really interesting because there's this very conservative American wing in Catholicism, and they went out of their way to choose the opposite.
Well, I think they honored Pope Francis's legacy, his progressivism. And, you know, I really do think they put some thought into this one because I think they know what's coming in the next 3 years. And there's a lot of MAGA people who, by the way, are already attacking the new pope. Well, and why? Why are they attacking the new pope? Because he has the unmitigated gall to actually follow the teachings of Jesus Christ. That's it, right? That's it, in a nutshell.
That would track, for sure.
I'm really hopeful that this new pope is going to have some major impact globally, but here at home among a certain group of people that I think really need to hear his message.
Yes, I think it was an incredibly important choice, and for many of the reasons you just named. And he's going to be in Francis's footsteps, and possibly even better than Francis.
Yeah, and he's going to be around for a long time because, what is he, 67? So he could be pope for 20, 30 years. I mean, that's pretty awesome. All right, let's get to our winners and losers.
My winner, the selection of Pope Leo XIV, whose vision aligns with compassion and being humble. Quick shout out to all the women and men who raise, take care, nurture, and guide their children this Mother's Day. My loser, Musk and Doge, for continuing to build a centralized database without citizen consent, which could result in loss of services, harassment, discrimination, or manipulation by the government, private entities, or foreign powers.
My winner's the same as yours, so I'm just going to say ditto. You said everything I was going to say on that. My loser is the flip side of that, which are the white Christian nationalists who are extremely upset right now that we have an American pope who is not like them.
My winner, I got to go with the Pope, Leo XIV. My loser, Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem. She got a scorching lesson in federal spending, immigration laws, due process, the rule of law, and the Constitution by Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy during a Senate Appropriations Committee hearing Thursday. It was beautiful. If you haven't seen it, watch it. All right, let's get to the weekly rant. So Donald Trump has created a colossal economic and stock market disaster with his utterly moronic, unnecessary, and totally unprovoked tariffs and trade wars. First quarter GDP contracted for the first time since the pandemic. Wall Street, while recovering some of its losses, is still down significantly from its earlier highs. Consumer confidence has cratered. Inflation and unemployment are rising. The global supply chain's been interrupted. Chinese cargo ships are sitting idle. Retail shelves may soon be empty. And most economists do predict an imminent recession. And this chaos and destruction has occurred all in the span of just 3 months, although it feels like 3 years. Of course, as usual, Trump takes no responsibility. And as we heard before, he's literally blaming Joe Biden for all the bad stuff while taking credit for the good stuff. He's also been putting immense pressure on Fed Chair Jay Powell to lower interest rates in order to clean up his self-inflicted mess. He's threatened Powell with termination and continues to publicly deride him. After the Fed announced on Wednesday that it wouldn't be lowering interest rates this month, Trump once again took to social media and called Powell a, quote, fool. Trump calling Powell a fool would have been like Jeffrey Dahmer calling Mother Teresa a cannibal. Let's be 1,000% crystal clear. Jay Powell is no fool. To the contrary, he's a brilliant man. Calm, cool, collected, stoic, resolute, and courageous. We should be calling him Big Balls, not that 20-year-old twit who licks Elon Musk's ass at Doge. It is Jay Powell who has kept this economy humming, even during the pandemic meltdown. He masterfully engineered a soft landing out of years of easing, stabilized the credit markets, and brought down inflation without negatively impacting the jobs market or the economy itself. And now he's doing it again, doing a terrific job shielding the economy from this ignorant, erratic, chaotic, self-serving, dangerous rogue president who wants to twist our monetary policy into a pretzel in order to save his own ass from his tariff and trade war debacle. But Powell's not having any of it. He understands his critical role, especially now. He's maintaining his independence, as he should, and he refuses to use the power of the Fed to mop up Trump's shit pile. And most importantly, unlike congressional Republicans and several major law firms, tech companies, and universities, he's not cowing to the king. He's a steely badass who respects the Constitution and democracy and is intent on letting Trump piss in the wind. He is truly a great American, a patriot, and we all owe him a huge debt of gratitude. All right, let's get to Representative Jahana Hayes. Congresswoman Hayes represents Connecticut's 5th District in the U.S. House of Representatives. She serves on the Education and Workforce Committee and the Agriculture Committee, where she is ranking member of the Nutrition and Foreign Agriculture Subcommittee. Her legislative priorities include education, healthcare, labor, agriculture, and veterans issues. A former history teacher and the 2016 National Teacher of the Year, Congresswoman Hayes was the first African-American woman to represent Connecticut in Congress, elected in 2018. And she has successfully had 11 bills signed into law and advocates for equitable access to opportunity for all. Congresswoman, welcome into the back room.
Hello. Thanks so much for having me.
So before I get to my first question, I just want to start off by saying I saw you on CNN's Town Hall, and I thought you did an incredible job of articulating the grave concerns that many Americans have and what they're feeling right now about this president and his administration. So I'm looking forward to talking with you about some of this stuff. You sit on the Education and Workforce Committee. Talk about the impact of Trump's spending cuts to public education and the critical programs affected by that. And then I want to get to specifically Medicaid and SNAP.
Well, yes, you're absolutely right. So on the CNN Town Hall, I tried to articulate to people exactly what these cuts mean. I am a public school teacher. That's how I came to Congress. I taught in the classroom for 15 years in a Title I school district. So I know not only as a congresswoman, but as a teacher, as a parent, as a community member, what these cuts mean. So what I tried to do was really explain to people, this is the speech pathologist in your school. This is the free lunch program and the summer meals that your kids in your community have. And I think people care about those things. This is about making sure that you have high quality teachers in your classroom. And I think that civil rights and special education laws are adhered to. Many people really don't have a true appreciation for what the Department of Education does. But once you start to explain those things as tangible items, you realize very quickly that people care about these things and they want children to learn and schools to be safe places, and us to do something about the epidemic of gun violence and all of the things that teachers worry about every day. And, one of the things I heard when I first came to Congress is if you're explaining, you're losing, but then you shouldn't have elected a teacher, because I recognize that you have to meet people where they are and not just assume that they know all the intricacies of public policy, but just explain to them what those things mean.
And what's happening in the House on Tuesday with regard to Republicans who are hell-bent on pushing forward with cuts to SNAP and Medicaid, as well as other things?
So on Tuesday, we start our reconciliation, which is a hearing on approving this budget framework. And oftentimes my Republican colleagues will say, they've been saying, well, we never said we're going to cut these programs. And what is going to happen next week is that then you're going to have to show the American people how you will achieve these numbers, $230 billion in cuts on the Agriculture Committee or $880 billion in cuts on the Energy and Commerce Committee without cutting drastically Medicaid and SNAP programs. It can't be done. And the math ain't mathin'. There's no other way to get to these numbers without cutting these programs. So these hearings, which will probably be, 12, 15, 20 hours long, because we're going to have to go through and they're going to have to really lay out their plan for achieving these budget goals without cutting these programs. And it just can't be done. And that is the point. And I think this is what I was trying to articulate on the town hall, where people have questions and they have to be answered. And we need to explain to the American people, these are the cuts that are proposed. This is what your benefits will look like. And are you okay with that?
I was kind of surprised in the last 24, 48 hours, Donald Trump indicated that he's going to perhaps raise taxes on the wealthiest Americans, which I found surprising. But like most of what Trump does, which is to lie and gaslight and be performative, is that all we're seeing here? Do you think there's ever going to be a situation where Donald Trump and the Republican Party push through tax increases on the rich?
Well, I think what I've learned with fidelity is that Donald Trump and my Republican colleagues are not reliable legislating partners. So you come to deals and you come to agreements, and then in the 11th hour, they all change. So I think that this chaotic, sporadic approach, once again, I'm not going to put too much stock in it, because I recognize that 24 hours from now, he could change his position on that. I also know where my Republican colleagues have fallen on this issue time and time again. I mean, we've had proposals to, look at raising taxes on the wealthiest individuals, of closing the carried interest loopholes, different things like that, so that we could fund some of our programs and make sure that we are protecting our most vulnerable. And their answer has always been no. So it will be very interesting how this plays out. I don't really trust it. I've seen so many of my Republican colleagues turn their backs on the lowest income, most vulnerable individuals in favor of the wealthiest individuals. So this would be a dramatic shift, which I welcome discussions about that. But once again, they have not been reliable legislating partners. So I'm just waiting for the wind to shift and the mood to change and for a new announcement to come out.
So this question is perhaps a little bit philosophical as it is political. We've been witnessing an all-out assault by this administration, by this president, on public education, as well as on colleges and universities. What do you think is at the root of this?
Well, we should public education is a public good. And what I've seen, many of the proposals that they've had is to shift it to private for-profit charter schools. So there's always a money angle there, which would absolutely be to the detriment of our Title I communities, of our lowest income communities, of our students who rely on English as a second language services, to our special education students who are protected by federal law. So there's a cruel aspect to it, which I don't completely understand. But for years, they've been trying to shift it to a private for-profit venture. As far as the universities go, I think that colleges, especially private colleges, should have the ability to decide their curriculum, to hire their faculty, to really educate a generation of thinkers and not be beholden to or dictated by the federal government, by a president, by anyone. So that is just dangerous. As a history teacher, I've seen, how societies that have gone in an authoritarian direction first control books, then learning, then the media, and all of these things. And that is not what we should be aiming towards in a functioning democracy. So, this has been their mission. They've talked about eliminating the Department of Education for years. And one of the things I ask people is, okay, so what is the plan? Our students who receive special education services are protected by federal law. They have civil rights protections. An IEP is a legal document. How will those accommodations be met? Who will take over our student loan programs, which so many people rely on, Pell Grants, which so many people rely on, Title I funding for our poorest and lowest income communities. There really hasn't been a plan laid out, just a lot of talk about tearing everything down.
Trump claims that the campaign against colleges and universities is all about fighting anti-Semitism, but that's really not what it's about, is it?
I don't think so. And I think my biggest challenge is this is the administration and a Congress that is literally dismantling the Office of Civil Rights, which would process claims of anti-Semitism, which would make sure that school districts, universities, that individual complaints are heard and people are held accountable to make sure that we are protecting the civil rights of all who fall into a protected class. But it is incredibly rich because at the same time they are talking about, not protecting students who have, religious differences, disabilities, students who identify as LGBTQ, tearing down what they call diversity, equity, and inclusion. It should be the role of the federal government to make sure that all students are safe and protected in schools. And we do need to eliminate anti-Semitism. We do need to address it, but we need to approach with that same fervor all students who are experiencing any kind of discrimination in their education settings. So it's really hard for me to understand what this administration is doing. We just had a hearing last week, and one of my colleagues in particular, who was really going at one of the college presidents really hard, I said, this is the same woman who was quoting Hitler on the steps of the United States Capitol, saying he was right about some things. So I struggle to believe that they really are looking to end discrimination in our schools and make sure that we are addressing anti-Semitism. They are using it as a political pawn over and over and over again at the expense of people who are actually being hurt and suffering a tremendous amount of pain because anti-Semitism is rampant in this country and on our college campuses.
We've also seen Trump's executive order cutting funding for NPR and PBS. Where do you think the biggest impact is going to be from this?
Well, we live in a country where people should be able to get unbiased facts that are not manipulated by government entities. Public radio, NPR, public broadcast, there are places in this country that are news deserts where public radios where they get a majority of their information, and it should not be political. It should not be biased. And the fact that this administration is targeting with surgical precision all of these outlets is dangerous. And I don't know where we go from there when we're starting to limit access to information, where people can't have dissenting ideas and dissenting viewpoints. Our First Amendment protections protect the freedom of speech and the right to assemble peaceably, the right to religion, all of these things that now this government or this administration is deciding which parts of the Constitution they're going to follow or adhere to. I think we have been as strong as we have been because those fundamental principles have always been upheld. And the fact that a program like Sesame Street that encourages inclusion and teaches children, about their friends who may have a disability or just how to share and be kind to one another is the target of this administration. It defies reason. And I think everyone, not just elected leaders, but everyone in our communities, the people who understand the value in public broadcast and public radio and public television should all be speaking out and pushing back so that these funds are reinstated.
You're also on the Agriculture Committee. What's been the impact on our nation's farmers with Trump's tariffs and trade wars? And where do you see this headed?
I mean, when you run a farm, they plan a season out. They're planting their crops for next year. They really cannot afford to this chaotic approach to tariffs and what will happen next. They really need to understand so that they can plan a season ahead. So many of our farmers rely on growing food that is supported through our SNAP program. I have people in my district who are in phase 2 of, a rural development grant. And now they're finding out that they're not going to get the remainder of the money after they've already put up their portion of the contract in order to make these necessary improvements. They can't plan. And it's deeply concerning because, for many of our farmers, one bad year means that they're out of business for good. And this administration is not considering that. The idea that they're going to experience a little bit of pain, they don't have a deep threshold for pain because they've suffered so many with climate change and, loss of land and not having access to capital. They've already had so many casualties that they've had to live through. So our farmers are really concerned. We don't have a farm bill. We are 3 years into a 5-year farm bill. Many of the subsidies that they relied on, the markets that they thought would be consistent, they're not really sure what's going to happen next. And, the world is looking at us and really looking at shifting who they partner with. And that's not good for our farmers either. And this administration is really not considering the long-term implications of the decisions that they're making.
Trump's talked about this. Do you think we're going to see another Trump bailout of farmers like we did in his first term?
I'm not sure, but I think we're getting dangerously close to the idea that we're going to have to do something to help our farmers. And the thing is, our farmers don't want a bailout. They want just reliable, consistent work and markets and to know what is happening. If there was a plan going forward for how these tariffs would play out, I think our farmers would be, like they always do, planning for whatever's happening, whatever will happen next. But there is no plan. It's been chaotic. It's been sporadic. And for many of them, if they're not planning for next year, they're going to need a federal bailout from the government. But again, I don't even trust the president to do that. We're seeing over and over again where people are suffering based on the decisions. Our economic downturn is because of the decisions that this administration is making. So I don't trust when he says he's going to do something, because I've been around long enough to know that, you wait 24 hours and that sentiment may change.
Yeah. It seems we're sort of in an economic calm before the storm with regard to these tariffs and trade wars and their impact on the workforce. What should Americans prepare for as we head further into Q2 and summer? How bad can or will it get, in your opinion?
Well, I was asked this question a couple of days ago by a reporter, do I think we're heading toward a recession? I absolutely hope not. This president, once again, was handed over one of the strongest economies, and much of what is happening has been the result of his own actions, not just letting the market play out. We see the stock market go up and down every day. And I think the biggest thing is the uncertainty and the chaos with which these tariffs and these decisions are being made. I just left an event. I'm at home today, and I just left an event where our school district is really trying to decide, how do we plan for next year's budget? By June, they're hiring teachers for the next year. So I think much of the problem now is the uncertainty. I have small businesses who are saying they applied for a small business loan and they don't know if they'll get it. Should they order less inventory? They don't really know how to plan because everything is so unpredictable. And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge, that everything is so unpredictable. People can't plan ahead. They can't look at the Christmas season or their busy time of year, things that they've always relied on. Everything is changing now. And that is probably my ask of my colleagues and even of this administration. The president absolutely has the right to pursue his economic agenda, but the chaos and the uncertainty with which he's doing it is actually more harmful than even the policies. I think if people knew what to expect, they'd plan accordingly. But that's not what's happening. Every day we wake up to a new announcement, to just this whiplash type of legislating effect. And that's not helpful for anyone. So I would, if I had to give people any kind of advice, it would be to not plan too far ahead.
That's good advice, for sure.
Not plan too far ahead. I mean,
Yeah.
because we don't know what's coming down the pike. But, for a lot of people, that's not okay. I have people who have their parents at home, worried about, will their Medicaid funding run out? And what does this mean for their plans for their kids going to college? And I have a lot of families who are weighing their decisions very carefully because of the uncertainty caused by this administration.
It is also unfortunate and unnecessary. That's the key word there. It's also unnecessary.
It's unnecessarily cruel is what it is.
Yes, well, that seems to be
again,
the operative word in this administration. It's all about the cruelty.
But I think that we're going to make it through. There are a lot of people, not just in Congress where I work, but around the country, who are paying attention, who are tuned in, who are reaching out to their legislators, who are making their voices known and really holding not only this administration, but all of their leaders, me, my office, everybody accountable. I imagine that we've had budget hearings before that no one paid attention to. I think next week when we are having hearings on Medicaid and SNAP and Social Security and these things, people will be paying attention in a way that they haven't done before. And I appreciate that.
Well, Congresswoman, good luck on Tuesday. Keep up the good fight. Thanks for coming on, and do come back again soon.
Thank you. Take care. Have a great day.
All righty, you too. Bye-bye. This episode of The Back Room was edited and produced by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-edited and co-produced by Maddie Rosenberg and co-produced by Jen Hammoud. Our theme song was composed by Andrew Hollander, and our logo was designed by Cricket Langell. And special thanks to Patricia Wind. Please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, and also follow or subscribe. Until next time, keep your eyes on Washington, Hollywood, and your own backyards, and have a great week.